So, as I said, I tease, and it's a Sunday morning. Edward wants to defend Hamas. Oh, sorry, Hassan. Because he said Asmongold was wrong, but he wants to embrace it like a good leftoid. So he fapping and he thinks it's right. But we have fundamental disagreement because he is a leftist. Yes.
Tiamat, this was the argument that you've somehow twisted in your mind.
You say that.
I said that in this case, Hasan won the debate against Asmongold.
And
Asmongold,
your Twitter is wrong.
Asmongold has since agreed with that. I'm not defending any of Hasan's videos, Hasan's takes. I'm just saying, in this one particular case, Hasan won the debate. Okay, so we're going to frame it that way.
Twitter and YouTube basically disagree with you, but that's okay.
Yeah, your Twitter and your YouTube are completely fucked and biased. So
my Twitter's entirely screwed. My Twitter is
unreliable source of information.
Do you know the one that I sent you about Stardust? Do you know anything about Stardust?
I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you spammed me with 31
I sent you
one
because
night,
you take this argument.
and I didn't read a single one of them.
So Stardust.
You can't spam people with 31 messages.
Yeah, no, it's more of the discussion because you don't know about the culture, right?
Oh my God! Look,
Hasan. Okay, you're saying about because I know the point, and I'll go ahead and say this out of the way. Because you say my Twitter and my YouTube is fun. It's very balanced. Stardust is a liberal Indian that lives in the U.S.
Is it your definition of liberal, or is it like a rational definition of liberal?
She is borderline very liberal, near progressive. She's a friend of Short Fat Otaku.
Okay,
basically,
get to the point. Get to the point.
What
were you going to say about this?
Even she said Hasan was wrong.
Okay, you found one person that agreed with Hasan.
A bunch did. Because you are going to see the part with him.
Tiamat,
yes.
Let's put this in context. What did Asmongold say prior to this debate?
Do you mean the initial?
What got him banned from Twitch? What did he say?
Well, it's arguable what got him banned. It could have been anything, but it's an overreaction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think
Tell me what he said.
Do you think it was hate speech?
I'm not asking for a value judgment on what he said. I'm asking you what he said.
No. You're doing off a thread, right? Let's see if he goes into this, because I'm curious.
When people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a They're terrible people.
What the Ain't no way he's talking about Palestinians, right?
They'd be doing the same thing. And how much did they kill?
This was a condensed
As many as they can. They're not able to kill as many people as Israel because they don't have as many bombs and as many weapons. But if they did, they'd be doing the same thing.
Oh, my.
So that's a part of the statement. Now, if you go to the stream that was nuked, he didn't say anything controversial that was threatening. It's a based opinion by him, Edward. He's entitled to his opinion. If the Western opinion is that most... are you familiar with the phrase?
Anyway, I just wanted to establish that because Asmond is such a little spineless fuckhead that as soon as he gets on stream with Hasan, he immediately walks back the severity of what he says and tries to minimize it.
Well, do you know about Asmongold, really? Without doing a deep dive, let me just tell you, he lives in Austin. He's from an Austin suburb, which is Central Texas. It actually establishes his character. Central Texas, mostly liberal or at best moderate Republican.
Oh God, yeah,
At best.
yeah, liberal, yeah, he's liberal.
So liberal leaning.
He's
Sometimes
fucking not liberal though, is he?
you can be liberal or you can
He
be
fucking
independent.
goes on Friday Night Tights and bitches and moans about fucking DEI and shit like that. He's not liberal.
I've never seen Asmongold on him.
Oh, well, he's part of that crowd of fuckheads. I
No,
don't know.
he is not.
To tell you the truth, I've seen very little of him, but I
Asmongold
was
is just a
immediately able
wow.
to categorize him as one of those
Well,
fuckheads.
okay, look. He's from Central Texas in Austin.
Who cares?
Because you call him, because I disagree with the take. He's actually doesn't care about Israel or Palestine. Now, he does try to minimize, but his original statement didn't incite. Now, if you want to get down to the technical part, you're not familiar with legal mindset, went over what the statement he said. It didn't condone a breaking. Now, there's potential breakage, but you can pretty much step on a hairline and break a TOS in Twitch.
Okay.
So I will dig up his initial statement, but the thing about it is, right, he does not. He may walk it back, but when you understand his audience, he replaced his audience. He's like Act Man. You remember when I said like he was like Act Man?
I don't know who Act Man is.
Act Man covers video games. He replaced.
Okay, I don't care.
So both Aspen and Actman both share opinions similar in a way, because Actman says he's conservative too, but maybe in an offline sense. But when it comes to his YouTube
So
channel,
he publicly says he's conservative, but it doesn't meet the very narrow and myopic definition of conservative that you accept. So he mustn't be conservative. Is that
actually
correct?
no, he most people don't.
Because you've done this a lot, and it seems to be a you
The
problem.
old Actman prior to Quantum TV was
I don't know who Actman is.
Okay,
Okay,
so Actman,
let's get
right?
back to the topic at hand.
Okay, I'm just establishing Asmon's character, right? So Actman does essays and reviews video games, been around YouTube a while. So he's been a fence rider like Asmongold. Tried to not make hot takes, go with the wind, and since the Quantum TV drama and he was remonetized, he's been playing it very fair. Recently in Andy Pants called him out and saying he won't call out the stuff like woke and stuff in video games and Nexus mods, even though he's a video game YouTuber. Now, what's funny is he's been on the record of saying censorship and Nexus mod stuff. Now, the problem is Andy Pants did say to him, put out a video that you're right wing and watch you lose about 250,000 subs. But he won't do it. Now, Asmongold in this hand is a very political animal, at least image-wise, because him apologizing and as of him stepping down or losing stuff he was a part of is basically because A, he apologized for nothing as a reaction. They took he gave them an inch. They took country miles. Now, because people saw him as alt-right, immediately.
No, Tiamat.
Yes.
Twitch has very clear terms of service guidelines about dehumanizing specific people, right? For race, for culture, etc. Asman's comments dehumanized Palestinians very, very, very explicitly.
Oh.
Right? It was an explicit breaking of terms of service.
Oh. So, question on that one. So, Hassan's various statements.
I'm not here to defend Hassan. We're here to go over the
So,
debate.
so
I don't
Hassan's
agree with a lot of what Hassan says,
nor
and
does Blurred.
I'm not gonna
No,
debate the fucking fairness of Twitch. We're
you
talking
did
about this
not know.
specific
You
case.
did not know that Hassan interviewed a terrorist and played Houthi terrorist promotion videos on his channel, did you?
No? Does this relate to this particular debate or something else?
It does, because he's never really been banned for it. Off and on, maybe, but not really. So, what is Twitch's call here?
Who was the terrorist?
Some kid, and he brought him on stream, and it's been like, we're not. This is the same Hassan said America deserved 9/11.
Yeah, he's a dumb idiot. I don't know what to tell
Very
you,
rich person.
but he's right in this case. And he's rich. What's it got to do with
Oh,
this
so
case?
he's from Turkish, because he tries to watch what he says to you, because I know you don't know about history. Because I can find it, the one I showed you, right, from the Federalist, justifies Hamas beheadings as both legal and moral, from October 27th to 23. Earlier this year, he interviewed a Houthi terrorist from Yemen. So, on Twitch, is he banned? That's actually promoting terrorism.
God, I hate this argument so much, bro. This is
Because here's the thing. Did you not see the thing from the Iranian Twitter? The Iranian subreddit? Who said when he said they accept trans people, he got it wrong? And they went after him?
No, he didn't.
Yeah, they do. Yes, they all did. They said he was wrong because
Didn't he say?
do you know
Didn't he
what
say Saudi Arabia was?
No, he said Iran in one part, and you'll see it. He says Iran is very pro-trans. You know what they do to gay people? They give them either A, take a bullet, or cut your balls and dick and balls off and transition.
Mm-hmm.
Or get chunked off a building. Hey, fair. Is that fair? Is that tolerant towards gay people? Well, hell no. Iranian subreddit said it.
So it's on Reddit. It must be correct.
I mean, even Wikipedia said that's their policy. Literally. We'll get into that, though. Hamas is known since October 7th of 23, right? To be pro-Hamas. Do you remember when he got off the leftovers? He was doing that with Ethan Klein,
Yep.
right? They broke up very horribly, so to speak. And even Ethan Klein, in a universe where Ethan Klein is the moral voice of authority, we must be in a dark timeline.
I don't think anybody considers anything that Ethan Klein says takes it seriously.
But he is an Israeli.
Yeah.
By the way, before we get too deep into this, do you know the difference between a Israeli Jew and a global Jew?
Not really. No.
So yeah, I've had the pleasure of talking to gaming with people, especially from all over the world. I've gamed with people from the Middle East. I have gamed with that. I've actually talked to them. The thing about the Israeli Jews are they're very, very Zionistic.
Wow.
Very nationalistic, very Zionistic. Wow. The place is the size of New York City that gets shelled and bombed every day. And I have
So you're saying that people from Israel Jews from Israel are more zealous than Jews from outside of Israel?
Pretty much. They're more of the same with most Middle Easterns. Do you remember the first time I said the Middle East will Middle East? Because the Middle East, right, is this weird hodgepodge of people. Being that nicely.
Hey, Tiamat, I'm looking at something on Wikipedia. LGBTQ rights in Iran.
What does it say?
Transgender identity is recognized through sex realignment surgery.
Yeah,
Sex realignment surgeries are partially financially supported by the state. Some homosexual individuals in Iran have been pressured to undergo sex realignment surgery in order to avoid legal and social pressure of being gay. Iran carries out more sex reassignment surgeries than any other country in the world, carries out more sex realignment surgeries than any other country in the world, ranking second place after Thailand.
So here's the thing about
what that means is Hasan's comments in this debate are correct.
And then there's another side to that too. When you start getting into broader policy, it's not either that or they take a bullet.
Yeah. Look, in the video, Hasan does not say that Iran has perfect fucking a perfect history with trans rights. He says they have a weird relationship with trans rights.
Nor do India or Pakistan.
Irrelevant, but
he quotes them as well. He gets the quoting of that religion and the third gender wrong as well. Did you not know it wasn't until recently that they allowed gay people to be recognized in India? Weird.
Yeah, weird and irrelevant. What does it have to do with the Middle East?
Because he brings it up, because you see this, right?
Crazy. Holy. What is this? This is the full clip?
Want to consider a genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people. They have genocide built into Sharia law.
Bro, oh my God, bro, oh my God. It's so funny because like his analysis right here is the liberal analysis. When you scratch the surface of like the average American over a certain age and why they are so blind to the obvious dynamic, the obvious inequalities, the obvious inhumanity of Israel's operations, they literally agree with this. They also think this. You only arrive at this conclusion after years and years and years of social conditioning that justify the war on terror, America's war on terror, and the unironic justifications for this war on terror required the dehumanization of Arabs and Muslims and every single person that lives in that part of the region. Because if you were to look at the situation and recognize that humans are being blown apart every single day so that America can secure oil fields in Iraq, you would go crazy.
That's a lie.
You have to either, on the one hand, omit key details, but also every single time you cover the atrocities, have to make it seem like they are, you know, worthy targets or collateral damage that is permissible. Why is it permissible? Because they're not really human beings.
Don't have as many bombs and as many.
So, what Hasan just said is the fucking propaganda lie that he believes. Not even Shank has backed him up. And Shank is his goddamn uncle.
I think there is some truth to that, though.
To be fair, there might be truth, but there's also more lies. Because,
at the bare minimum, what he is saying, that for your people to be comfortable to go to war with anybody, there has to be some sort of system where the other country is otherized, right? At the bare minimum, that's what has to happen.
Question.
Happened in World War II, happened in World War One, happens all over the world.
I have a question.
In Iran, nations go to war,
in Iran,
right? And you have been living with 20 years of conflict in that region of the world. There's been 20 years of some sort of otherization of those people.
Okay. In Iran, who's a big Satan and a little Satan?
What?
Who is the big Satan and the little Satan?
You're talking about like America and some other country. Is that what you're referring to?
What's the little Satan?
I don't know.
Come on. It's Israel.
Little Satan. Can you just tell me what you're fucking trying to get at, please?
So, Iranians have had a policy for nearly 30 plus years since the Ayatollahs took over
Yep.
that there's the big Satan and the little Satan.
Yep.
And the big Satan is the U.S. because we fundamentally get blamed for the shitty Shah's son that we had no power over because we put his father in, then his father chose him, and basically the current print.
Move on.
So you're saying, and that's how they view it. And in the 80s, they immediately tried to turn around in Lebanon and start bombing shit. Then basically the only reason it didn't escalate further than that is because Reagan said, we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age. And the Beirut bombing, I don't know if you know about that, but the war on terror has been in the works or going on off and on for almost 40 plus years, going back to the 60s. It just exploded more or less because after, in the late 80s, of course, you had Afghanistan. Then you had bin Laden. Bin Laden, we back to take out the Russians there. He disappeared off the radar, started the Taliban, and then we immediately started looking for him because he was very radical and he had very more money and connections. The next thing you know, we had the attack on the World Trade Center in 93.
No. You had the Gulf War with America going to war in an oil-rich nation.
Because
you had propaganda then.
Because Saddam had chemical.
That country.
At the time, Saddam did have chemical weapons.
No. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Saddam was coming off a almost 8 to 10 year war with the Iranians. They made a tenuous peace. He used gas. He used all sorts of shit.
Yep.
Now, that is a very bloody conflict. Now, when ironically, Iranian influence became greater when the U.S. finally pulled out. But bear in mind, it's the Shia-Sunni relationship. Depends really when you want to look at it. They don't really trust them. Now, you get into the 90s. You have the World Trade Center bombing. You have the rise of Islamic extremism in Europe. Europe does Kosovo. Now, controversial hot take is they were going to start wiping out Muslims in Europe to control the flow of the immigrants coming in. Now, Clinton kind of stopped that, but low-key. Now, you flash forward the rise of Sharia law in the 90s post the World Trade Center bombing that was done in reports. Now, it led into a lot of chatter right before 9/11. Now, you say this is not, of course, in my generation and our generation, this is the defining conflict. It exploded. But in the 90s as well, you had the assassination, I think it was of Rabin, who was going to do the two-state solution with Arafat by an Israeli. Did you know about that? Was assassinated because, well, they felt he was going to settle out Israel. Now, unironic is that place has been an eternal war for a very long time because they weren't for a two-state solution, even going from Bush. The idea is, if there were lies, the idea about chemical weapons isn't that. When we went into Iraq, again, we found traces of chemical weapons that had been covered up by our Pentagon. Gulf War illness came back like a massive bitch. Okay? Our military kept that hidden.
Mm-hmm.
We found it in underground bunkers. We found it. We gave enough time for him to deport all of that and the money. Do you remember in the Syrian civil war, the reports of sarin gas use?
Yeah.
Where the fuck do you think that came from? Came from stockpiles that was left over from Iraq. Now, it's an unpopular opinion, but yes, it was executed very poorly. That's why I say, in this opinion, this is just mine from knowing the military and the part of it. It's not as much interference right before till you get up to the Arab Spring. It wasn't a peaceful place. The Middle East is kept alive by strong men and theocracies. You know what that means.
Yeah. And what does Hassan say about that in this video?
Well, does he understand that dynamic?
He is from Turkey, and he grew up there until he's 18. So he's probably got a pretty good awareness of this, right?
He grew up mostly outside of there.
But what does Hassan say about this in the video?
It doesn't matter if he says it became more secular or fundamentalist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you gotta understand, it's not like Turkey is your friend.
He makes a very specific. He brings up this random point about the hierarchy of needs, right? Which when I heard him bring that up, I was like, what the fuck is he on about? But then he ties it back to the course of developing nations, right? And whether or not they have the financial, the cultural, the spiritual capital to fucking devote themselves to gay rights, trans rights, and shit like that. And he said these countries had been in conflict for the better part of the last century. So they hadn't developed the rest of the nation, right? So
I mean, you're talking
Asman using their history with gay rights as some sort of indication that they're lesser than the West. Well, he's saying there's a reason for that. It's because they haven't been given the opportunity to develop further because of their conflict.
How do you... See, I've often said this, that Islam is one of the purest religions in the world. I have said this. It's one of the most unchanged religions in the world. Because their Council of Nicaea, they had to have all the imams who knew Muhammad in his lifetime agree on each verse. Now, very, very extreme process, but it's very fundamentalist, very much not changing. Christianity changes and morphed over time. They had the Reformation. They got better. Islam mostly stayed the same to the same of the 1400s or the 1500s. It didn't move an inch. Barely. It wasn't until like in the 2010s they allowed a woman to drive without a man or be out in public without it. That's because the Saudis, which are at war with, do not like the Iranians, which are Shiite, and as well as been bombing the living shit out of Yemen, because Yemen has been being backed by Iran. All that, the attacks on the shipping lanes. Now, it's not the problem of in the region, right? You can say Turkey. Turkey is very moderate because it's near Europe. Saudis, it's not like we think of them as friends. They're allies of convenience. They're also one of the worst people we have in the war on terror. Because what people don't know is when we want information, Mossad's pretty bad too. You know what they do? They go in and just blow the guy up. Mossad will just
Tiamat, you're on a completely, you're on a tangent, right?
I'm saying, no, what I'm saying
The
is,
topic we're discussing is not the war on terror.
I'm
and
saying
different
this is
tactics about
this is
that.
where this is tactics, right? When he goes, if he tries to say we're friends or they're secular, you have to understand, right? They are not friends and they are fundamentalist. They are extreme in their own right. They're different than the rest of the world because he likes to make the case there's moderate Islam. He would be the first person called an apostate in the Islamic State. But listen to what he says. That's what you don't know, Edward.
Weapons.
Yeah, dude,
But if
I have
they
to go in
did,
30
they'd be
minutes,
doing
so
the
we better
same
get
thing.
through this.
That's it. Just takes enough. That's right. These people are not your allies.
Takes longer
They
to
are
get
not
through.
the same as
You-
us. They come from an inferior culture.
Put it on 1.5 times.
Asmongold, your co-owner of your organization, you are calling a person from an inferior culture. What
I
are
would
you
have to
doing?
play
Log
it.
off the internet, stop reading Reddit, and go talk to some real humans, please. Holy shit.
That is horrible. It kills people for their
download.
identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways. It is that simple.
Bro, this is straight up 1-to-1 what Nazis said about Jewish people, what like the most right-wing approach to this conversation. This kind of attitude, American exceptionalism,
Watch for the rhetoric.
literally is
Wind
the
it back
same
30
thing.
seconds.
You're just
What?
Wind it back 30 seconds.
Really?
what are you doing? Log off the internet. Stop reading
You.
Reddit
This is
and
a
go
good
talk to
tech
some
line.
real
Listen to
humans,
what Asmund
please.
says.
Holy shit.
That is horrible. It kills people for their identity,
I
and it
know
is
what he
directly
said.
antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways. It is that simple.
Bro, this is
Right. He says
straight up
An
1-to-1.
inferior culture
not-
in all ways.
That is actually an opinion of the West. And
Right.
he's
Keep
entitled-
that in mind. Keep going. Keep playing.
He's
He said
entitled
about
to that
Jewish people,
opinion.
what like the most right-wing approach to this conversation.
Watch
This
what
kind of
Hassan says
attitude,
right here.
American exceptionalism literally is the same thing. You're just removing American exceptionalist sentiment that is baked into American society, Western superiority. You're just taking the thing that shelters it and the thing that makes it like the norm. When you remove the outside patina, the skeleton remains. This is the skeleton. This is the bare bones, okay? This is the bare bones of the argument that like America
the
is
way
the best
they
country
see
on
us.
earth. When you remove the outside stuff that makes it, I guess, seemingly more appropriate for liberal consumption, okay, in an otherwise liberal society, this
Because
is what you
liberalism
arrive at. I don't
doesn't
think,
work in
like, I
Iran.
think he popped off on this,
In
not thinking
any
that
kind
like
of
this
Middle
would
Eastern
be,
society.
there would be a lot of repercussions for this.
And
No,
you
that's
know what
not what
else
he's
is
saying.
disgusting?
Stop. Pause.
That people in the West enjoy more privileges and freedom than anywhere
Pause,
else in
Tina.
the world.
Huh?
Pause the video.
Yes.
Hassan's point there about American exceptionalism, right? He's drawing a analogy between Islamic countries enforcing their views outside of their country onto the world, and America enforcing their own views onto the world, right? And Hassan is just saying, American imperialism has been packaged in a way for the American people to be comfortable with it, where it's like this, they're doing the rest of the world a favor by enforcing their will on the world.
So, how do you enforce nationalism and democracy like America has onto a place that already has it?
Well, he's not talking about countries with just democracy. And what else did you say?
Do you think the Middle East has democracy?
No. Did you just ask me how do you enforce democracy on a country that's already got democracy?
Do you think, okay, nationalism. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Um,
Exceptionalism in your nation.
there's a certain level of pride in a nation that's acceptable,
Hmm.
but there's also something that America does where they take uh, they believe that their point of view, their values, should be the values for the rest of the world, which is completely fucked up.
So in the Middle East, as I've established, they have their own form of nationalism. They have their
Yeah,
own. Do
yeah.
you remember anything what happened when the Islamic regimes like took over Afghanistan a long time ago, like the Taliban took over? What the first things
Yeah.
they did? Do you remember like these
Well,
thousands of
Hassan
years?
also makes the point, Tiamat. That's not nationalism. That's religious fundamentalism, right?
That's
And he makes the
nationalism
point.
to them.
He makes the point also that religious fundamentalism gets a foothold in countries when the rest of their needs aren't being met by the government.
What do
There's
you
this.
think their governments are?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, where their governments have, religious doctrines and shit like that, right? That's
Do you remember
cool.
what I
I
said
understand
about
that.
the growth of Sharia law since the 93 bombing? We
Yeah,
reached a peak. And I
yeah,
live in north central Texas, which is the Dallas Fort Worth area. We have been under watch because of it's like the Homeland Foundation and down near like Irving or like a part of Dallas where we have a large Muslim population. It's not because of reasons. It's not because it's just they're there. They're watched for a reason. Because a couple, I forget what year it was, they got one that was going to blow up the Fountain Place, tried to in Dallas. These people do exist and they do come over. It's not like you can look at Europe, right? Like, look at the Middle East, right? It's not like the idea, right, is they don't separate theocracy from their government. It's one and the same. The tweet that I sent
I
you,
agree, Tiamat. I
did you, they,
agree.
for God's sakes,
I
they
agree,
executed a
and I agree
man.
that is a bad thing.
They executed a
Listen,
man for listening to music on an
yeah,
i thing.
Tiamat,
Come
I've told you
on.
in the past that I'm not a fan of any religion,
Okay.
right?
But but also my point too is when they took
Hassan
over,
makes the point that
uh
America was given the opportunity to separate their Puritan origins and their religious theocracy origins
and most of
from
us
their
have.
governments, right? Hassan has made that point, right? That America was given the opportunity to separate their theocracy from their government, and it was a good thing. He also makes the point that the Middle East, because of their conflict for the last
Well, you
century,
go through
has
it,
not been
right?
given that opportunity. And particularly in the last the increased conflict in that region, that religious theocracy and religious fundamentalism has taken over because people's human rights are being violated and their needs aren't being met in any way by the government. So they're
Well, I
scared,
disagree with
they're
that because
terrified, and they're looking for
man.
something to turn to.
Okay. Who was the person you think threw the powder keg that destabilized the Middle East?
I don't
One of
know.
the So the major tipping point wasn't the invasion of Iraq, right? It was the Syrian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So the Syrian conflict started a chain of basically ISIS was trying to take over all these places. Syria went to civil war, and then they all had to go somewhere. They went to Europe. I'll play it and see, because you see, he says it himself. Because what he is saying, right? But my point too is, you can't separate it. Do you remember like the marvels of like Buddhist statues? They just blew
Wait,
them up.
when
Do you
the
remember
Syrian
that?
conflict? When did the Syrian conflict begin?
Syria? When did it actually start?
Hmm.
That was Syria Civil War started in March of 2011.
And you're saying that's what began the unrest in the Middle East?
It in the modern era. It
It's
actually,
fucking 10 years after 9/11 and the war on terror.
well, you had Bashar al-Assad, but where do you think when ISIS was trying to take over? So what do you think they were doing? Do you think it stopped?
Yeah, but Tiamat, you're just reinforcing Hassan's point and my point, where
Uh-huh.
there's been conflict in that region, right?
Well, who started
There's
it?
been a state of constant conflict, which has meant they have not been given the opportunity to evolve as a nation, develop further. They've not been given that freedom and that time for their governments to separate theocracy from government. Right?
Do
Hassan
you
makes these points
do
in this video.
you every time you give money to either Hamas or also Obama gave money to Iran because he
Yeah.
thought they were peaceful? Do you know what they did with that?
Did they buy weapons to him at?
Basically, to further their nuclear program and
Mm-hmm.
to also just fund it out to people. And every given time, do you think October 7th of last year was just a thing? You think it was a blip in the radar? No. It happens every so often. It was just one of the big ones. Did you know on the day of the vice presidential debate, Iran launched about 300 missiles into Israel, trying to take out the Iron Dome defense?
Sorry, when was this?
The day of the VP debate.
When?
October 1st.
Okay.
So we're talking this month. In Israel, basically, now, in according to basically, well, technically, fog of war is very funny. They tried to dam one of the bases that was the Iron Dome's defenses has a lot of craters. Now, didn't take it offline, but did some damage to it. Well, what is the Iron Dome? The Iron Dome is just a missile defense system. Now, in reality, it's not like they've been peaceful. But the larger reason, too, is not the theocracy, right? Because they are themselves. You didn't know about that, did you? That was October 1st. And it was very uncomfortable during the debate for Walls to answer. Because if the United States was strong, it wouldn't have happened. Now, this is a state of the Middle East. Who do you think perpetrates? It's either Hamas, it's not largely Israel. Israel protects their stuff. They fundamentally believe the Dome of the Rock sits on the site of the temple.
Yeah.
The Muslims believe that's where Muhammad ascended to heaven because they have, and technically they don't allow Jewish people there. Now, I take the historical weird stance. The Jews could be rebuild the temple. What's funny is they've been building in the wrong place. They could build it, but it's not where they think it is. Basically, it is where the Temple of Jupiter was, roughly. So they have been fighting over this ground, thinking that the Dome of the Rock sits on where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. But fundamentally, history that they don't choose to acknowledge or potentially acknowledge is that it was built where the Temple of Jupiter was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Israel, Jews, Christianity, and Islam all fight over one city. You don't think there's generation of bloodshed that goes back to the PLO in the Muslim Brotherhood back in the 20s, before the Israeli people arrived post World War II. Then there's this whole thing, history, but it's blood upon blood. That's not something you forget. Basically, if you think in the Middle East, let's see if Hassan says it, but go over it. But like the idea, right?
Romanticize their behavior or their lifestyle
See.
as anything other than barbaric.
Okay.
This is what people think you say about Israel. I know. I know. Like, if you were to say this about Judaism, understandably
Civvy
and
says
rightfully,
this.
you would get banned, and you should get banned. Like, if I were to ever say this about, if I were to ever say like, oh,
But he doesn't
Jewish
get
culture
banned.
is this way, I would literally be Adolf Hitler. Okay, it's fucking ridiculous. For the
He's never
record, I
said
don't
shit
believe
that
that
inflammatory about
Judaism.
Jewish people. Keep playing the video.
Yeah, you say that.
Regardless of how much my psychopathic rabid haters try to claim, I believe it.
I know plenty of Muslims that respect gays. Well, I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm talking about people in Palestine. The truth is that that's what they do.
Dude, come on, dude. What? Palestinian culture as a whole? How the... Dude, this is your brain on Reddit. This is your brain on Reddit. If you don't interact with normal people, if you don't talk to people on a daily basis, and the only way that you're getting information from, your only outlet to the outside world is just simply Reddit, you arrive at this conclusion. It's like literally a vector of radicalization against Muslims, Islamophobia, and also specifically Palestinians. That's crazy. It's also
That's what he
additionally
says.
ironic when we talk about LGBTQ support, because this community, like, his community hates gay people in representation in like video games. So what the that's the other part of this that I don't understand. It's like, oh, Western culture is so superior.
No, he
we
doesn't.
love the gays, except I throw a fit every time I see them in my video games. But it's bad when Palestinians,
Asmongold doesn't do
imagine
that.
an alternative reality when Palestinians also do that. And I hate it when they do that. Okay, Asmongold wants to talk, he said. Hello?
Hey,
Oh, hang on.
Can you
Pause
hear
the
me?
video.
Yeah, I can hear you. All right.
Okay. I have a disagreement with that. You remember when I said he's a fucking fence sitter? He's a fence sitter. He's a reactionary YouTuber, right? But he is no god. Like, okay. If you ask the gamer's opinion of Asmongold, that is not what we think of as a Hassan season.
If
We don't.
if I'm looking at Asmongold's YouTube stuff, right? I type Asmongold DEI. You get shit like, she tried to defend DEI. This happened. Google is censoring something. DEI. Goodbye, PAX DEI.
So
We started a brand new world. PAX DEI.
So the idea, right, is he's been writing this fence in video games for a while, but he cannot. If he goes too far, it's like Act Man.
He's got a video bitching about fucking Assassin's Creed Shadows.
He
What
was
else do we
doing.
have?
He does reactions to people. By the way, the Assassin's Creed Shadows thing is a different can of worms. That is a very bad can of worms. It's too long to get into because it's based on a lie. It's based on misinformation, and Ubisoft has been eating shit ever since.
Mm.
My God, they just...
He complains about whitewashing.
Well, he is a gamer at heart. He cares if the game works. Do you know where I first learned about Sweet Baby Inc? Want to take a guess?
He plays a video, I'm gay and I don't like the LGBT community.
Yeah. Look, he does a lot of reaction videos. That's his bread and butter. What do you think?
Don't know. Hassan's
So
point there about him being one of these dudes that fucking bitches and moans about gay people and shit in media, right? Has a
it's
problem with
clickbait.
them.
It's clickbait, but he also
He's not wrong.
He sees both sides though, because if you look at the outside of the clickbait and you go into the actual videos, he sees the representation. The reason
Matt, I got to leave in 10 minutes.
you see, he does.
Asmon,
Yes.
in the interest of fairness,
go
I
over.
want you to explain what you said that I saw in clips, in limited clips earlier
Right,
today,
yeah,
I think.
Okay, so basically, I find it to be really problematic that people put like a lot of virtue signaling, and I think it is virtue signaling, for people that are supportive for like trans rights and LGBT rights when they support countries that kill
Very
people and
stupid the way he
prosecute them
did
for
this.
being LGBT. I think
Okay.
it's a huge problem, and I don't think you can have both of those things.
So when you were saying like Palestinians exhibit inferior culture that's barbaric, you were simply talking about the hypocrisy. Is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much. I do. And somebody in my chat said that you said that I thought Christian theocracy was better.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, what a fucking surprise. Okay. Well, here's
So-
the thing, right?
Did you
go
catch
ahead.
that?
I
Edward?
Yeah.
I want you to like fully explain because
Hassan got
Not
caught
really.
lying.
understand. I
Hassan
want to
got
understand
caught
everything
lying.
that you mean beyond the hypocrisy, because like the hypocrisy version or
This is
the
actually
hypocrisy
been
in and of
cut,
itself is
but
one thing
he
that we can
said-
address.
Shut up,
It's a
I'm
super
listening.
simple concept.
Well, how
But I
do you
think there's
feel
a
about that?
broader, there's always a broader point beyond hypocrisy, because online, hypocrisy in and of itself, or even the invocation of hypocrisy or perceived hypocrisy is seemingly a more damaging thing than like actual material harm, right? Oh, this
Sure.
person is hypocritical, and that's like a very common fucking
Yeah.
thing. I'm sure you experience it on a regular basis as well. It doesn't really matter.
Most hypocrisy, I think, is derived from a misunderstanding that is often deliberate. I see it
Yes.
oftentimes with you. You've seen it with me. Everybody has it happen. It's
Yeah, it's
extremely
the-
common on the
Pause.
internet. Yeah.
You do know.
Right.
This is
so
Hassan
Hassan just
trying-
totally fucking took apart his argument there, where he's like, all right, hypocrisy is one thing. That's fine. But in the real world, it's a very minor fucking, it has very minimal negative effects
Yeah,
in
it
the
has
real world.
minimal negative effects in the except
Right.
in
So
the
he
long
totally
run.
took apart, he just destroyed Asman's first attempt to walk back what he's saying.
No, you know what it is? Let me say this to me. This, when I heard it, right, was okay. The part is Asmongold stood his ground. But the problem is, if you look at his body language into Hassan, Hassan likes to cope and says he's not a hypocrite. I have seen him when he goes on Piers Morgan in a lot of outlets get called a hypocrite.
Tiamat,
It's
I
mad.
agree. I agree. We're not talking about Hassan's entire body of work. I said he won this debate.
Look, he tried to
Okay?
set up a cope
And
here.
we're not talking about hypocrisy in terms of one person. We're talking about hypocrisy in terms of Palestinians, right? And people supporting them while also supporting gay rights. Okay?
Asmongold
That's-
also came into this wrong as well, because we all know Asmongold is basically a... See, when it comes to video games, he's kind of either fence sitter or very based. But when it comes to his political takes, oh god, he's a retard.
Who'd have thunk that a fucking YouTuber is just talking shit about video games and doesn't back up those views politically? Who would have thought that?
All in all, right? I knew he was going to fold because it's just a PR reaction. But that's like the separate side, as I told you. The other half of this is if he stuck to his guns, it would have blown over. Hassan would have taken the heat for his stances on the Muslim culture that he's about to make, and it would have been fine. But he went and apologized, gave them instead of giving them inches or foot, it allowed them to take the country mile. Now Twitch decided to go nuclear, but Hassan has a body of work that would get him banned, and he's never been banned. You got literal adult stars on the side that appear in just chatting on the front page. It's a teen site, not an adult site, Edward. That breaks TOS. Apparently, a VTuber showing hips breaks fucking TOS that they walked back. So, if Asmongold said something that was inflammatory or threatening, he has all rights to be banned. But he didn't. It was a call of a moderator. Go back to the Dr. Disrespect thing. It was a he said, she said, and it came down to a group of moderators that wanted him out. Now, in reality, we do not know the nature of those messages, and from they said, it was pretty much nothing.
T-Mac, he said an entire country's culture is inferior.
But that's not threatening. It might be demeaning, but it's not ban worthy.
Isn't it just the same as using racial slurs to refer to a race of people? Right?
Doesn't Hassan's body of work come before him?
We're not talking about Hassan's body of work. We're talking about this particular case.
So when Hassan interviewed a terrorist and the terrorist was bragging about it's okay to blow up Israelis and he played hoopty propaganda on his stream, is that not promoting terrorism?
I'm not totally unaware of this, so I can't comment. Right?
In your opinion, if he did that, is that promoting inciting violence?
I'm not going to comment because I don't know and I can't trust your interpretation of the situation.
Really? I'll find that for you when he interviewed it, because here's the thing. That's actually inciting terrorist. Right?
All right, look, I have to go in 2 minutes.
You do your
2 minutes.
Yeah. You will have to get back to this later, because this is going to be an interesting conversation. Because if you think this is going to be an interesting stand, because the way he
save
does
this video for next time.
Oh, you're going to enjoy it, because I already know kind of how he phrases it. Because here's the deal. Before you do go, let me show this. You know the hoopty population, right? He does it, right? And when he interviewed, he basically didn't get banned for it. He got shit from his audience. Hold on. Here it is. I'll remember the timestamp. So, here. This is the fully. You want to actually work? Oh. So.
You got 1 minute.
I've just got to share this, by the way. It's going to be, crappy. Here you go. You see this?
To tell the truth, I can't really see it because I'm looking on my phone and it's tiny.
Okay, just look at this. It's enlarged. Do you see that?
Yes. I don't know what it is, though.
He played this on his stream. This is a hoopty propaganda video promoting violence, killing Israelis.
Yeah, and what were his comments about it?
Right?
What were his comments about it?
This is Hasan and his friends. Let me see. So
All right, man, it's 11. I've got to go.
you think, but look,
We can watch this video
look
next
this
time,
up.
right?
I will have to see this.
But I can't hear the sound, by the way.
I'll
I
have to
don't
get
think the
this.
viewers can hear the sound either.
It's fine. I'll explain this to you later. But bear in mind, there's a lot of stuff he does.
Yeah, he's a total idiot, and I'm not saying his entire body of work is defensible. I'm saying in this particular case, he won the debate. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting because I think when he founded, because before you think about this, the way he
All right, I
phrased
gotta
it,
go, Tiamat. I gotta go. We
yes,
can't continue. Goodbye.
see you. Good Lord. See, this is the problem. He doesn't see the way it's laid out. Like a person's body at work, right? If it's the case, this is going to have to be done again, but the idea I have is I understand where Asmongold's coming from. Hassan's not my favorite person. I've said Hassan's right like a broken clock twice a day. Right twice a day, sorry. But the concept itself is his phrasing was really like he's out of touch. As I said, he has shown long in the past, he has shown, right? So here's it is. So he has shown this. This was in October, 27th of last year. He went on a thing, justified killing Israelis. Now, see, because while on the Leftovers podcast, Piker said this is going to sound very radical and very violent, but there's a matter of the law. That has been, if you agree on this matter of morality, have legal ground to violently seize back and take their home for the settlers. Piker clearly invoked international law, which does not allow for the killing of civilian combatants. Now, this is very controversial, but this was in wake of one of the largest attacks. Now, I mean, the video's been on X, right? But this is where he does. While debating Ethan Klein on morality designating Israel babies as militants, Piker insisted the babies are settlers as well. There are babies in the settlement. On the other hand, he thought living there are proper settlements in the eyes of some. I do not agree, but I do think it's an admirable solution. It's not a realistic anyways. It will only lead to a complete evisceration of the Palestinians, and the far-right Israelis will use that to constantly radicalize Israeli citizens against endless bombing. Now, if you go back of Piker, Braceless is interesting, right? You know, it's one of those things of he has a body of work before him. But still said that in play. These people, you can't moralize with people. The problem is, I establish, right, if let's assume their Zionistic position. He did not know about the Iranian missile attack on the Iron Dome on the 1st. I did. I mean, my issues are Hassan basically, he's in a bubble. Now, my take overall is, right, because you can't make the take that Asmongold apologized. He deserves everything he gets for apologizing. He either could take it lying down, lose sponsorships, but that's a separate thing. I'll get into that. But on this, the secular and fundamental Middle East, it's not because Hassan has said they're just a peaceful protest. It's one of those things that's been his tagline. They're freedom fighters. One man's freedom fighters is another man's terrorist. Over there, because Edward doesn't get when you start moving around refugees, you lead to the European violence crisis. There was literal beheadings as soon as Syrians. So, brief history, right? Syrian civil war, right? It started basically as a thing, right, in the wake of stuff. So the Syrian civil war goes like, how does this influence stuff, right? Obama was probably one of the most militant drone presidents known to man. He had a chance on the 30th anniversary of the, which would have been the Green Revolution, to back the Green Party to out the mullahs. He chose not to. Now, I mean, Obama, why did you do that? It would have been a very interesting legacy. Back the Green Party, and you would have probably knocked out the mullahs, and you would have did it. And then that's how you got Ahmadinejad, and who was basically a guy at the protest in the, basically the embassy. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happened. Now, in reality, right, you have the ISIS, you have this, you have Bashar al-Assad. A lot of refugees started streaming out of the Middle East. Where did they go? They went to Europe. Now, in reality, in the meantime, what we see in the West fundamentally is violence. Now, let's see what Edward says. The idea. There's the famous story of the night the Muslim Brotherhood was elected, where the day they took power, a CNN journalist was basically raped in the square, and she was forced into silence by CNN. Now, some could say that's an isolated incident. As soon as the refugees got through Europe, settled in Europe, and settled in parts of Europe, they started doing Sharia law in these things. Now, I don't know if Hassan acknowledges this. I don't know if his types acknowledge it. It's funny, I saw a Muslim guy basically said, yes, you got to respect the tradition that you're in the land you're in. But the French ceded ground and gave them to have Sharia law in sections. Germany basically said, oh, it's just the machete that made him do it. Right. That's not the case. Now, the idea is that's how the West sees them. If you're going into power dynamics, Hamas's charter with Palestine says they have the right to obliterate Israel and all Jewish citizens in it. Now, given the power dynamics, they would do the same. So, the idea of power dynamics, you can't talk about the culture all day. There is, at least in my opinion, moderate Islam is very hardly practiced in the Middle East. You see it in the Saudis. They've laxed their traditions. But they largely are still secular or fundamentalist sections. Turkey has maintained that line because they're the gateway to Europe. Iran has gone separate. Now, in reality unto itself, it's going to be interesting whatever it does. Because you could say, right, forced transitioning people is not tolerance. Again, I'm privy to more defense knowledge that comes from the government and comes from understanding of hearings and comes from the war on terror and the aftermath of it for the last how many years. Because I do historian. I believe in doing that. That's why when I know when Hasan speaks, I know he's lying. Taking fundamentalism, it's basically the idea. It goes beyond the idea is one man's terrorist is one man's freedom fighter. I mean, both Hasan and Asmongold both made dumb arguments. This is why it took me a long time to even get through half of it before I got through it all. I mean, mind-numbingly, it just allows me, when I play Diablo or something, I can just do that in the background. But the idea, right, is it's not like they're tolerant. I mean, my presumption is, look, liberal tendencies to believe the world's a better place doesn't happen. But then again, I'm a person who sees the world as it is. Look, a spade is a spade. They don't change. I mean, you might see some changes. You might see some progression. I mean, Saudis progressed to now let women be out in public without anything. I mean, when the Muslim Brotherhood lost power, they walked that back. Iran still has very strict laws. But you don't see the feminists and you don't see that. Because Hassan tried to say because they're systematically oppressed. That's not the case because culturally they can't do it. It's their culture. It's the problem in the US. You cannot separate the terrorist from the ideology and from the religion. Because it's baked in. Now, is this a bad thing? Can it be reversed? Potentially, yes. But in my opinion, Hassan has never seen it. But I also have the opinion it's very hard to negotiate. You don't negotiate with evil. I'm going to have to go into this more, but this concept, though, is very much the case. Hassan doesn't understand it. Asmongold didn't understand what he was getting into. Asmongold always sticks his basically fat mouth into stuff. Political takes are what gets him in trouble. He started Starforge. He started OTK, really. I mean, I think it's like someone said in OTK, Miskiff and somebody else had SA allegations. Think of it. Is that any worse than what Asmongold did, but he's still there? I mean, I guess he's still going to be a mythic. The idea, right, is liberals don't think of it. They think they can apply their understanding of the world to a society that doesn't like it. Saudis, to this day, they're really not our friends nor our enemies, to be honest. If you ever want the internals of our government, we always prepare for the fall of the Saudi regime. Never forget, bin Laden was a Saudi prince. That's the thing. But it's not like the Saudis are our friends. They're not our enemies either. But when we need them in the war on terror, they will help us for a price. Mossad helps us for a price. But when we want intelligence, that's when the problem comes in. How do you get intelligence from a dead man? And it's trust me, bro. Good luck. But that's a deeper problem, though. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of dark secrets in the U.S. But the whole thing, too, with Hasan as well, like if you haven't caught it, he's just saying, oh, everyone Nazis this and Nazis that. That's because he uses buzzwords that makes him work. But when you look into their actual culture, they say he's basically an idiot. That's why if Asmongold waited days, I'm not saying he should have hit it, right? It's a based opinion for being in the West due to the recent times. Right? It's just how it goes. You can look at the rise of the attacks in Europe. They're tired of it. It's always going to be a cultural war between the West, the Middle East, and the East. Always. And each have their form of nationalism. Say this in closing. Because the idea is I don't think Hasan gets the actual Middle East. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of officials do. It's either you're siding with one over the other, potentially destabilizing or doing something, or you're playing both sides against each other. One of the two. And recent years, it's been a combination of both. E.g., Biden says he supports Israel, but also leaving troops there to accidentally have a rocket dropped on top of them to give grounds to go against the Palestinians. And then when it happens, either hide about it or lie about it. It's one of those things. You can't have friends and you can't have frenemies, I guess. If you don't want friends or enemies, you have frenemies. And it's been a big deal, but Hassan's line is he's been full supporter of Hamas since October 7th of last year. This is just it, a long line of stories. But it's going to be interesting because I disagree with a lot of his take on how he did it. Because Hasan wasn't right. Now, there's a lot of stuff you can't say on YouTube. Communities want to say, but you can't say. Hasan, going back years, should have had been banned. He talked to a Houthi terrorist. The Houthi terrorist got banned from X. Again, it kind of goes into the rules for thee, not for me. Now, in reality, I find it interesting because these are the discussions I like better. I feel that it's going to be interesting to see how he goes about it. I kind of know how he's going to go about it because he has the tendencies. But the idea is they're tolerant. It's like anybody. An ideologue is tolerant till they're in power. Then the undesirables are removed first. That's an actual cruel, cruel, cruel reality. Like, in a communist revolution, the first to go are the useful idiots, or the ones who know too much. It's kind of like if you take short and fat Otaku or Dev, right? He's naive enough, but he's there. If you know the inner workings, you go first. It's weird to say, but in Islamic regimes, the first to go are always what was established. Like, prime example too. Like, the Democrats in West here don't talk about Afghanistan now. The Taliban took back over, re-walked back everything. On top of getting a lot of hardware. Women were going to school. They're not allowed to go to school again, etc., etc. And what's funny is they're very hospitable to Westerners. Unless they want to kidnap you. But details on that. But you don't hear the discussion in the East as the West treats the Middle East. It's a different culture. I mean, India and Pakistan, prime example, have been butting heads for years. Well, one's like Hindu or Hindi, and then basically the other one's. But I mean, like, you got to remember. But a lot of the West, like Hassan's Pikers of the world, they don't acknowledge it. But they're very quick to villainize Israel. Like Kamala Harris has villainized Israel. I've caught that recently. She even said that in the interview with Brett Baer. But yes, this will be continued another day, and it's going to be interesting. But then again, there's a lot of history and a lot of governmental interactions. And unfortunately, it's been playing out. As I said, a two-state solution was proposed before. But the prime minister was assassinated by an Israeli person. And I think it was 96. And the guy was a war hero of the 67 war, basically. And it's very interesting because it's not like they want peace, either side wants peace. They like peace at the point of a wall or a gun. It's very different. It's kind of like the DMZ. Unfortunately. But I will leave this be, and this will have to be continued another day. It will be interesting. See, he didn't know about the other stuff Hassan said. He didn't, like, well, how do we know this? It's like, Hassan's a walking PR nightmare. There's a reason Shank doesn't trust him. But anyways, I'll be out. I'm going to get sleep. I don't know. I got to finish up the upload or just play it off stream. It's going to be great. It's a lot of grinding. I have a lot of free time currently, like, or just I'm not either streaming games. But yeah, so I was kind of still awake because I was trying to get the free exotic in Division 2. But that's a separate matter. But yes, this will be interesting. Because he has a hard time correlating events of the past on how it moves forward. It does. Like, it's one of those things of you can't just have a problem and solve it. Biden's administration didn't solve it. You could make the arguments that Trump did the settlement agreement and maybe lay part of the blame of Afghanistan. But it's like funny when, because it's funny, by the way, the civilian death tolls initially displaced, right? The initial, basically the Syrian conflict is a prime example, displaced initially 6.7 million initially, internally, and 6.6 million refugees worldwide as of March 2021. It's more than that now. But in reality, right, it goes along the lines of, I know Edward doesn't care, but like the idea of the Arab Spring and ISIS. It's interesting. It's not really the death tolls as much as it is when they fight, those people have to go somewhere. Then you have to ask, will they conform? Think about that. We have that in the U.S. with our migrants. Latin Americans, which are mostly Venezuelans coming up, don't want to integrate. They're causing cultural problems here. What do you think the Muslims are doing to Europe? Germany basically buries their head in their sand. There's a story for that. As I said, the guy who went on a machete rampage and ramming a truck in a car, a truck into a fruit stand and into a thing. Supposedly had a falling out with his wife. Extremism didn't make it do it. It was just a domestic issue. But it's very much close to TOS. But anyways, I will catch people later, and this will be continued another day.